I am Alexandria, 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like when my husband left. Nothing prepared me for finding my accounts drained of $155,000 by my baby sister Jessica, who I practically raised. The sister I gave emergency access to my finances vanished with her boyfriend Tyler, leaving me financially devastated and emotionally shattered. But sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places, like my 8-year-old daughter Lily, who uttered words that changed everything. Mom, don't worry. I handled it. Let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to find out how my little girl outsmarted the adults who tried to destroy our lives. Growing up in Portland with Jessica, who was 5 years younger than me, created a bond that I thought was unbreakable. Our childhood home sat in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood with tree-lined streets where we spent countless hours riding bikes and building elaborate worlds in our backyard treehouse. Despite our age difference, we were inseparable. I was always the protector, the nurturer, making sure Jessica had everything she needed. When neighborhood kids teased her about her red hair or slight stutter, I was the first to defend her sometimes, getting into trouble for my fierce loyalty. From an early age, I showed a knack for financial responsibility that contrasted sharply with Jessica's free-spirited nature. While I saved my allowance meticulously in a color-coded system of jars, Jessica spent hers immediately on whatever caught her fancy. I never minded. Her impulsive joy for life balanced my careful planning. By 14, I was already budgeting and researching how to invest the money I earned babysitting. Jessica, meanwhile, floated through life on charm and last-minute scrambles. Our relatively peaceful childhood fractured when our parents announced their divorce. I was 16, Jessica only 11. The night they told us, Jessica crawled into my bed, sobbing, and I made a promise that I would always take care of her. Our father moved across the country to Florida for a new job, and our mother, struggling with depression, worked long hours to maintain our lifestyle. Suddenly, I became not just a sister, but a surrogate parent to Jessica. I stepped up in ways no teenager should have, to making sure Jessica had proper meals, helping with her homework, and creating as much normalcy as possible. I deferred my dreams of studying out of state to attend Portland State University so I could remain home. Meanwhile, I watched Jessica retreat into herself, her grades slipping, her once bubbly personality becoming more withdrawn. My natural aptitude for numbers led me to a finance degree, and I secured an entry-level position at a prestigious financial firm during my junior year. By 23, I was making enough money to help Jessica through her first year at community college. She struggled academically, but showed an unexpected talent for graphic design. I paid for her to take extra courses in that field, believing in her abilities even when she doubted herself. Jessica dropped out of college after 3 semesters, cycling through a series of retail jobs and creative pursuits. Each time she ran into financial trouble, which was often I was there with a safety net. When she couldn't make rent, I covered it. When her car needed repairs, I handled it. I never saw these as loans, but as investments in my sister's stability. Maybe that was my first mistake. I met David, my future husband, at a financial conference in Chicago when I was 25. He worked for a competitor firm, but had a vision for a boutique financial consulting practice that aligned with my own ambitions. Within a year, we were married and moving to Boston to start both our business and our life together. Jessica seemed genuinely happy for me, throwing herself into wedding preparations with characteristic enthusiasm. Our daughter Lily was born a year later, and for a while everything seemed perfect. Jessica visited regularly, delighting in her role as the fun aunt who brought quirky presents and boundless energy. But beneath the surface, my marriage was developing fractures. David and I disagreed fundamentally about the direction of our business and parenting approaches. When Lily was 3, David announced he was leaving for an opportunity in London. The business division was messy, the emotional toll even worse. During the divorce, Jessica proved herself a true sister. She temporarily moved to Boston, helping with Lily while I navigated legal meetings and restructured the business to continue without David. Those months created a new layer to our relationship. She became not just my sister, but my confidant, my support system. When Jessica returned to Portland, Lily cried for days. The next 4 years were focused on rebuilding. I rebranded the financial consulting business under my name and developed a niche working with professional women navigating major life transitions. The irony wasn't lost on me. I practiced what I preached, creating robust financial safety nets for myself and Lily. By the time I was 33, the business was thriving. Lily was flourishing in school, and I had finally achieved a sense of stability. 6 months ago, Jessica called with news that changed everything. She was moving to Boston. She had broken up with her long-term boyfriend in Portland and needed a fresh start. Would I help her get settled? Without hesitation, I offered her my guest room until she found an apartment. I even pulled strings to get her an administrative position at my company, thinking her design skills could eventually be useful for our marketing materials. What I didn't fully register then was that Jessica had mentioned meeting someone new online, someone named Tyler, who had recently moved to Boston from Seattle. In my memory now, there were red flags from the first time she mentioned him. But I was too busy, too trusting, or perhaps too conditioned by our history to see them clearly. After my divorce, I approached rebuilding my life with the same methodical attention I gave to my clients' financial portfolios. I diversified my emotional and financial investments, creating systems that would protect Lily and me from future catastrophes. My emergency fund contained $42,000, enough to cover 6 months of expenses if my business faced unexpected challenges. Lily's college fund had already accumulated $35,000 through careful monthly contributions and conservative investments. My business account maintained a healthy balance of $78,000 to cover operating costs and expansion plans. When Jessica arrived in Boston, she brought a whirlwind of energy into our carefully structured lives. Lily immediately reconnected with her aunt, their bond seemingly unbroken despite years of primarily digital communication. Jessica had a natural way with children getting down on their level and treating their concerns with genuine interest. While I sometimes struggled with patience after long workdays, Jessica could spend hours engaged in Lily's elaborate imaginary games. Within 2 weeks, Jessica found a charming one-bedroom apartment just 15 minutes from my house. I helped with the security deposit and first month's rent, considering it an investment in having family nearby. The administrative job at my company suited her well initially. Clients responded positively to her warm personality, and her eye for design elevated our presentation materials. For the first time in years, Jessica seemed to be finding her footing. As my business grew, so did my travel obligations. Financial conferences in Chicago, client meetings in New York, and occasional consulting opportunities in San Francisco meant I needed to be away from home several days each month. Jessica eagerly stepped in during these absences, staying at our house with Lily. They developed rituals and inside jokes that sometimes made me feel like the outsider when I returned. I dismissed the twinge of jealousy as petty, grateful that my daughter had another loving adult in her life. 3 months into this arrangement, I decided to add Jessica as an emergency signatory on my accounts. My financial advisor cautioned against it, suggesting alternatives like limited power of attorney, but I overruled her concerns. What if something happened to me during travel? What if Lily needed something urgently? The memory of our parents' divorce and my promise to always take care of Jessica echoed in my mind. I trusted her completely. Looking back, the changes in Jessica began around the time Tyler became a regular presence in her life. He appeared unannounced at our Sunday family dinners, charming and attentive, but somehow always deflecting personal questions. His claimed background in international finance never quite aligned with his vague employment situation. He was between opportunities, he said. Consulting remotely, he explained. The market was in transition, he assured us. Jessica's wardrobe transformed subtly at first. New designer handbags, she claimed, were excellent replicas. Shoes that I recognized from luxury collections. When questioned, she laughed it off, crediting sample sales and online discounts. I wanted to believe her. Meanwhile, her work performance became uneven. She's missed deadlines, called in sick more frequently, and seemed distracted during meetings. The financial requests started small. A few hundred for unexpected car repairs. 1,000 for dental work not covered by insurance. Each time Jessica promised repayment when her next commission-based project came through. Each time I transferred the money without hesitation, mentally filing it under sister support rather than loans. When the amounts grew larger and the reasons more ambiguous, I still didn't connect the dots. In early April, an important client requested an in-person strategy session in Chicago. The 3-day trip would potentially lead to a major expansion of our business relationship. I hesitated initially, as Lily had a school performance that week, but Jessica enthusiastically offered to handle everything, including filming the performance, so I wouldn't miss a moment. Grateful for her support, I confirmed the Chicago meetings. The morning of my departure, Jessica seemed unusually attentive, asking detailed questions about my itinerary and insisting on driving me to the airport rather than using my regular car service. During the drive, she reminisced about our childhood, asking if I remembered specific moments from 20 years earlier. The conversation felt oddly nostalgic, almost like a goodbye, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. During the first 2 days in Chicago, Jessica's texts were brief and sporadic. Pictures of Lily at her performance came through, but when I called to speak with my daughter that evening, Jessica said she was already asleep, despite it being earlier than her usual bedtime. A vague unease settled in my stomach, but I attributed it to the general anxiety of being away from home. On the 3rd day, my client meetings concluded early. Rather than staying the extra night as planned, I booked an afternoon flight back to Boston, thinking I might surprise Lily with my early return. I didn't tell Jessica partly because I wanted to surprise them both, and partly because of a growing unease I couldn't articulate. As the plane took off, I had no idea that my world was about to shatter. The Uber driver from Logan Airport commented on the beautiful spring evening as we drove through Boston. I barely heard him already mentally planning the surprise for Lily. I had even picked up a small stuffed penguin, her current obsession, from the airport gift shop. When we arrived at my house, I was surprised to find it dark. It was only 7:30, too early for Lily to be in bed, especially if Jessica was watching her. I assumed they might be out for ice cream or at the playground down the street. I called Jessica's cell phone, which went straight to voicemail. Not entirely unusual, but combined with the empty house, it triggered the first real alarm bell. I texted my neighbor Sandra, who sometimes kept a spare key, asking if she'd seen Jessica and Lily. Her response came quickly. Jessica had dropped Lily off that morning, saying, "I had asked her to watch Lily until I returned tomorrow as planned." My heart began racing as I immediately called Sandra, asking her to bring Lily home right away. While waiting for them, I drove to Jessica's apartment just 15 minutes away. The parking spot where her red Corolla usually sat was empty. When I knocked on her apartment door, there was no answer. The property manager was reluctant to let me in until I explained I was her employer and was concerned about her welfare. What we found inside turned my concern to horror. The apartment was nearly empty. Closets cleared out, personal items. Gone furniture, still there, but stripped of anything valuable or sentimental. In the kitchen trash, I found discarded mail and papers Shed failed to take or destroy, including a brochure for a resort in Cancun and printouts of information about opening offshore accounts. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and logged into my banking apps. The numbers that appeared on the screen made me physically ill. My emergency fund, zero balance, with a withdrawal of $42,000 made yesterday afternoon. Business account, similarly decimated, $78,000 gone. Most devastating of all, Lily's college fund, $35,000 vanished. In total, $155,000 had disappeared along with my sister. I sank to the floor of Jessica's abandoned apartment, my mind racing to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Through my shock, I made the necessary calls. First to my bank reporting the fraud, though I had authorized Jessica as a signatory. Then to my financial advisor who had warned me against this very scenario. Finally, with profound embarrassment, to my assistant to cancel the next day's client appointments. I couldn't bear to explain why yet. The property manager hovered awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with my distress, but also concerned about unpaid rent. Through my tears, I asked if she had security cameras in the building. She did, covering the main entrance and parking area. After some persuasion and a promise to return the next day with a police report, she agreed to save the footage from the past week. When I returned home, Sandra had brought Lily back and gotten her ready for bed. My daughter flew into my arms, full of stories about her school performance and completely unaware of the catastrophe unfolding around her. I maintained composure through her bedtime routine, reading an extra story and sitting by her bed until she fell asleep. Only then did I allow myself to fall apart again. The next morning brought grim clarity. The bank confirmed that Jessica had methodically emptied each account, staying just under daily withdrawal limits to avoid immediate flags, then making final, larger withdrawals yesterday. They expressed sympathy, but reminded me that as an authorized user, Jessica had legal access to the accounts. Without evidence of coercion or fraud, this was a civil matter, not criminal theft. I took a personal day and returned to Jessica's apartment with a police officer to file a report. The security footage showed Jessica and Tyler making multiple trips to their cars over the previous week, gradually moving out possessions. The final footage from yesterday morning showed them loading several small but heavy-looking bags into Tyler's sleek black BMW before driving away. In a kitchen drawer overlooked during their hasty departure, I found materials for creating fake identification cards. A partial receipt showed purchases of prepaid phones. These small pieces of evidence suggested this wasn't a spontaneous betrayal, but a calculated plan developed over months. The officer took the materials as evidence, but warned me not to expect quick results. The most painful discovery came through Jessica's laptop, which she had apparently forgotten in her haste. When I charged and opened it, automatic login to her email revealed months of correspondence with Tyler planning their escape. They had researched countries without extradition treaties. They had jokes about my trusting nature. Worst of all, they had discussed using my close relationship with Lily as leverage to gain access to my accounts. Over the next few days, the full impact of Jessica's betrayal rippled through every aspect of my life. Client projects were delayed. Bills came due with no operating capital to pay them. My business credit was at risk. Vendors called, asking about missed payments. Each conversation required me to swallow my pride and admit that I'd been robbed by my own sister, someone I had trusted implicitly with both my financial security and my daughter's well-being. Nights became a torment of sleeplessness and anxiety. How would I rebuild? How could I have been so blind? The questions circled endlessly, preventing rest. I lost 8 pounds in a week, unable to eat through the constant knot of stress in my stomach. The betrayal was financial, yes, but the emotional devastation cut much deeper. The sister who had crawled into my bed for comfort during our parents' divorce had now deliberately destroyed the security I'd spent years building for my daughter. The weeks following Jessica's betrayal blurred together in a fog of practical and emotional crises. During the day, I functioned on autopilot, restructuring business operations, applying for emergency business loans, and reassuring clients that their projects would continue despite internal challenges. I described the situation vaguely as a security breach, unable to admit the humiliating truth that my own sister had orchestrated this collapse. Nights were different. After putting Lily to bed, the carefully constructed facade crumbled. Panic attacks became regular visitors, my heart racing so fast I feared it might stop altogether. Sleep, when it came, was shallow and filled with dreams of falling. I lost 15 pounds within 3 weeks, my clothes hanging loose on a frame, suddenly too thin. Friends commented on my appearance with concern, but I deflected with vague explanations about stress and busy schedules. For Lily's sake, I maintained a semblance of normalcy. School drop-offs, weekend trips to the park, nightly reading rituals, all continued as though our financial foundation hadn't been obliterated. She noticed changes, of course. Children always do. She asked why we had canceled our planned summer vacation, why we were eating at home every night instead of having our Friday restaurant adventures, why I jumped whenever my phone rang. I provided gentle half-truths, protecting her from adult burdens while teaching her that sometimes plans change when circumstances shift. The most difficult question came 3 weeks after Jessica's disappearance. Where is Aunt Jessica? I hadn't prepared adequately for this inevitable inquiry. Jessica had been such a presence in Lily's life, especially in recent months. Their bond had grown close with Jessica, knowing Lily's favorite books, her secret fears, her proudest accomplishments. How could I explain that the same aunt who braided her hair and cheered loudest at her school performance had also stolen her college fund? I chose a partial truth, explaining that Jessica had taken a trip without saying goodbye, which wasn't respectful or kind. I acknowledged that this might make Lily sad or confused, and validated those feelings. What I didn't say was that Jessica had betrayed us both in the most fundamental way, had violated trust that should have been sacred. I couldn't bear to shatter Lily's innocence with the ugliness of adult greed. The conversation seemed sufficient until I found Lily attempting to call Jessica's disconnected number from my phone one evening. The sight of my daughter hunched over the device, leaving a voicemail asking her aunt when she was coming back, broke something inside me that had been barely holding together. I excused myself to the bathroom, where silent sobs racked my body. How had Jessica abandoned this child, who loved her so completely? That night, after what I thought was a successful bedtime routine, I retreated to my home office to review the latest communications from the bank fraud department. The news wasn't promising. Despite the police report and mounting evidence of premeditation, the fact remained that I had legally authorized Jessica to access the accounts. The legal path to recovery would be long, expensive, and without guaranteed success. Around midnight, I allowed myself a rare moment of complete breakdown. Sitting on my kitchen floor back against the refrigerator, I wept openly for everything lost. The money, yes, but more importantly, the relationship I had believed, in the security I had built for my daughter, the trust I had extended. Without question. The sobs came from someplace primal beyond conscious thought. A small voice broke through my despair. Mom Lily stood in the kitchen doorway, her favorite stuffed penguin clutched against her unicorn pajamas. I hastily wiped my face, trying to compose myself, but it was too late. She had witnessed my vulnerability in its rawest form. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Did I wake you up?" I asked, patting the floor beside me in invitation. She padded over and settled against my side, her small, warm body a comfort I desperately needed. "You're sad about Aunt Jessica and the money," she stated with surprising directness. Shocked, I pulled back to look at her face. "How do you know about the money?" I managed to ask. Lily looked down at her penguin, suddenly seeming unsure. "I heard you talking to Miss Natalie on the phone," she admitted, referring to my lawyer friend who had been helping navigate the legal aspects of the theft. "And you look at your computer and cry when you think I'm asleep." My heart sank. Despite my best efforts, Lily had absorbed the stress permeating our home. I had failed to shield her from adult concerns. "I'm so sorry you were worried," I began, determined to reassure her. "But this is a grown-up problem that I'm working on solving. You don't need to think about—" "Mom, don't worry. I handled it," Lily interrupted her expression, shifting to something unexpectedly determined. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "What do you mean you handled it?" Lily slid out of my embrace and stood up. "Wait here," she commanded with the authority only an 8-year-old can muster before disappearing from the kitchen. She returned moments later, clutching her tablet, the one Shed received for Christmas, and used primarily for educational games and video calls with her father in London. "I knew Aunt Jessica and Tyler were doing bad things," she announced, sitting cross-legged on the floor and opening her tablet. "They didn't know I was listening." With a few taps on the screen, Lily navigated to a folder labeled School Projects and opened a voice recording file. The audio that played froze my blood. "We need another 30,000 at least." Tyler's distinctive voice emerged clearly from the tablet speaker. "The accounts in Belize are set up. Once we transfer everything, well, have enough cushion to disappear completely." Jessica's laugh, once familiar and comforting, now sounded hollow and foreign. "Alex makes it so easy. She trusts me completely with Lily, with her house, with everything. The emergency access to the accounts was her idea, not even mine. Can you believe that?" Their voices continued, discussing specific accounts, withdrawal timing, and plans for their escape to a non-extradition country. The conversation had clearly taken place in my home, likely during one of my business trips when Jessica was staying with Lily. I stared at my daughter in disbelief. "When did you record this? How did you know to record them?" Lily shrugged with the nonchalance of a child who doesn't fully comprehend the significance of her actions. "They were talking in the living room when they thought I was asleep. They sounded scary, not like Aunt Jessica usually talks. So I used the voice recorder app we learned about in computer class. I didn't know what they meant about accounts and stuff, but they sounded like the bad guys in movies." A bizarre mixture of emotions washed over me. Horror that Lily had been exposed to this conversation, pride in her instinctive recognition of wrongdoing, and a sudden fierce hope that this recording might provide the evidence I desperately needed. "There's more," Lily continued, swiping to another file. "And I know Aunt Jessica's secret email password. She always types it when I'm sitting next to her. It's Lilybear 2016 with a capital L and B. She thinks I'm not looking, but I see everything." In that moment, looking at my daughter's earnest face, I realized she had indeed been seeing everything. The adults' behaviors, the undercurrents of deception, the shift in her aunt's affections. While I had been blinded by history and familial trust, Lily had been observing with the unfiltered clarity of childhood. "This isn't something you should have had to worry about," I said finally, pulling her into a tight hug. "But you've been so brave and so smart. What you did might help us fix this grown-up problem." As I held my daughter, a strange calm replaced the panic that had been my constant companion for weeks. The evidence Lily had unwittingly gathered might not recover all that was lost, but it opened a path forward I hadn't seen before. More importantly, it reminded me that even in our darkest moments, unexpected strength can emerge from surprising sources. The morning after Lily's revelation, I woke with a clarity and purpose that had been absent since discovering Jessica's betrayal. While Lily ate breakfast, I called Natalie, my lawyer friend, who had been helping me navigate the legal aspects of the theft. I briefly explained the recordings and asked her to come over that evening after Lily was asleep. This evidence changed everything, but I needed professional guidance before proceeding. At work, I moved through meetings and client calls with renewed focus. The paralysis of betrayal had lifted, replaced by a determination to reclaim what was stolen, not just the money, but also my sense of security and justice. During lunch, I researched digital forensics experts who might help authenticate Lily's recordings and retrieve additional evidence from Jessica's abandoned laptop. That evening, after tucking Lily in with extra gratitude and an extra bedtime story, I welcomed Natalie to my living room, where we spread files across the coffee table. A corporate lawyer, by profession Natalie, had been skeptical about my chances of recovery, given that Id authorized Jessica as a signatory. The recordings transformed her outlook. "This is a game changer, Alexandria," she said, removing her glasses after listening to the files. "This clearly establishes intent to defraud, conspiracy, and premeditation. It's no longer your word against hers about whether you gave permission for specific withdrawals. They literally recorded their plan to steal from you." Using Lily's information about Jessica's email password, we logged into the account from my computer. The treasure trove we discovered exceeded my expectations. Jessica had kept everything: 2 confirmation emails for airline tickets to Cancun, and then onward to Belize communications with banks in multiple countries and dozens of exchanges with Tyler planning each stage of their escape. Most shocking was an email from Tyler to Jessica containing a detailed dossier on me, my assets, accounts, schedule, even information about my childhood that Jessica had clearly shared to help him manipulate me. Attached was a similar file labeled Prior Projects, containing information about 3 other women Tyler had apparently targeted before Jessica. This wasn't just my sister's betrayal. She had become complicit in what appeared to be Tyler's ongoing criminal enterprise. "This guy is a professional con artist," Natalie said, scrolling through the documents. "And Jessica's not his girlfriend. She's his accomplice. These other women. He did the same thing to them using different names. He finds vulnerable women with assets, sometimes using relationships, sometimes using business connections." The realization that Jessica had not merely betrayed me, but had actively participated in a scheme that had victimized others, shifted something fundamental in my understanding of the situation. This wasn't a desperate act or a moment of weakness. It was calculated predation. "First thing tomorrow, we're taking this to the police," Natalie declared. "Not just your local precinct, but the Financial Crimes Division. With this evidence, they can issue warrants for bank records, border crossings, everything. The FBI might even get involved since there's evidence of interstate and international wire fraud." While Natalie outlined legal strategies, I found myself thinking about Lily. My 8-year-old daughter had instinctively recognized a threat that I, with all my financial training and adult experience, had missed completely. Her innocent action of recording conversations that felt wrong had potentially saved us from complete financial ruin. The next morning, after dropping Lily at school with promises of ice cream, later I met Natalie at the police station. The detective who had taken my initial report was skeptical until we played the recordings and showed the email evidence. His demeanor changed completely as he realized the scope of the crime. Within hours, the case was escalated to the Financial Crimes Division, and by afternoon, I was sitting in a conference room with two FBI agents specializing in wire fraud and international financial crimes. They asked me to walk through my history with Jessica, my relationship with Tyler, and the timeline of events leading to the theft. They were particularly interested in Lily's recordings, both for their evidentiary value and the unusual circumstances of their creation. "Your daughter may have single-handedly broken this case open," Agent Ramirez told me. "Without those recordings, this would have remained a civil dispute with limited law enforcement options." While the investigation proceeded, I faced the immediate challenge of keeping my business afloat. With brutal honesty, I called each major client, personally explaining that I had experienced a significant theft by a trusted family member, but was working with authorities to resolve it. To my surprise, several clients responded with compassion rather than concern, some even offering to prepay for future services to help with cash flow. My friend Marcus, a business consultant who had referred several clients to me, organized a group of colleagues to create an emergency business loan fund. Another friend, Paula, set up a meal train so I wouldn't have to worry about cooking during the crisis. These acts of practical kindness from my community stood in stark contrast to the betrayal it experienced from family. The most difficult task was explaining the evolving situation to Lily in age-appropriate terms. One evening, over hot chocolate, I attempted to frame it as a lesson in right and wrong. "Remember how we talked about Aunt Jessica taking a trip without saying goodbye?" I began cautiously. "Well, the police are looking for her now because she took money that didn't belong to her." "Is she going to jail?" Lily asked, her expression serious beyond her years. I paused, considering how to balance honesty with sensitivity. "She might, yes. What she did was very wrong, but that's not something you need to worry about. The grown-ups are handling it now, just like you handled finding those recordings." Lily's next question caught me completely off guard. Was she ever really my friend, or was she just pretending? The question pierced through my adult rationalizations to the childlike heart of the matter. Had Jessica ever truly loved us, or had we merely been targets? I didn't have a simple answer. "I think people are complicated, sweetheart," I replied carefully. "Sometimes they can care about us and still make terrible choices that hurt us. I believe Aunt Jessica did love you, but she got involved with someone who convinced her to do bad things." This answer seemed to satisfy Lily temporarily, though I knew we'd revisit the conversation many times as she processed this early lesson in human complexity. As May turned to June, the investigative machinery gained momentum. Jessica's and Tyler's names were flagged in international law enforcement databases. Their accounts in Belize were frozen pending investigation. The evidence from emails revealed they had only managed to transfer about 60% of the stolen funds offshore before the accounts were flagged. Each small victory in the investigation helped restore my sense of agency, though the financial damage remained severe. I worked with my financial advisor to create a recovery plan, cutting personal expenses to bare minimums and taking on additional consulting projects to rebuild our emergency fund. The business loan from friends provided essential operating capital until client payments resumed normal flow. Throughout this period, I maintained a journal documenting both practical steps and emotional processes, recognizing that rebuilding financial security would require healing from the betrayal as well. Each entry ended with 3 things I was grateful for, a practice that gradually shifted my focus from loss to resilience. Lily's name appeared in nearly every entry, her unexpected wisdom continuing to amaze me as we navigated this challenging chapter together. The call came on a sweltering Tuesday in late July, 3 months after Jessica and Tyler disappeared with my money. I was reviewing quarterly projections with my assistant when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar Florida number. Something in me knew immediately who it was, despite the unknown caller ID. Alexandria Bennett, I answered professionally, stepping out of the conference room. The screaming began immediately. How could you do this to me? How could you report your own sister to the FBI? Do you have any idea what I've been through? Jessica's voice, once so familiar, now sounded like it belonged to a stranger, shrill, desperate, and completely lacking self-awareness. I leaned against the wall, my knees suddenly weak. Jessica, I responded, fighting to keep my voice level. Where are you? I'm in a fucking jail cell in Miami, she spat back. Tyler and I were trying to board a cruise ship. They arrested us at the terminal. They handcuffed me in front of everyone like I was some kind of criminal. The irony of her statement might have been amusing in different circumstances. You are a criminal, Jessica. You stole $155,000 from me. You emptied my emergency fund, my business account, and even Lily's college savings. A harsh laugh came through the phone. Oh, please, like you couldn't just make more money with your fancy business and perfect life. You have no idea what it's like to always be in your shadow, to be the screw-up sister who never measures up to Alexandria, the financial genius. Her attempt to reframe her theft as some kind of justifiable reaction to sibling rivalry stunned me momentarily. I'd spent months trying to understand her motivations, wondering what I'd done to deserve such betrayal. Now she was suggesting I'd somehow earned it by being successful. This isn't about our childhood or who made what choices as adults, I finally said. This is about you systematically planning to steal from me, collaborating with a known con artist, and then fleeing the country with money that represented years of my hard work and Lily's future. A pause then, a shift in tactics. Tyler took most of it, she said, her voice suddenly small. He left me in Cancun with barely enough for a hotel room. I had to pawn my jewelry just to eat. He was using me, just like you're saying, he used those other women. The victim narrative might have worked 3 months earlier. Now, with evidence of her active participation, her claims rang hollow. The emails, Jessica? I replied calmly. We found all the emails. The planning, the offshore accounts you opened in your name, the research into non-extradition countries. You were a full partner in this. Another pause, longer this time. He said we'd need it all to start over, she finally said, desperation creeping into her voice. He said with your financial skills you'd recover in no time. It wasn't supposed to hurt you long term. I closed my eyes, absorbing the twisted logic she was using to justify her actions. In her mind, stealing my life savings wasn't really harmful because she believed I'd easily make more. Did you ever think about Lily? I asked my voice, finally betraying emotion. Did you consider what it would do to her to have her aunt abandon her without even saying goodbye to steal the money meant for her education? For the first time, Jessica seemed genuinely speechless. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, vulnerability replacing defensiveness. They're saying I could get 5 to 7 years, Alex, she whispered. My public defender says the evidence is overwhelming. She says my best option is to cooperate against Tyler for a reduced sentence. She says I should talk to you about restitution. Now we reach the heart of the call. Not remorse for the betrayal, but a strategic move to reduce her sentence. I considered hanging up, letting her face the full consequences without my intervention. But something stopped me. Perhaps the lingering echo of our shared childhood, perhaps simple human compassion. What are you asking me exactly? I responded cautiously. If you tell the prosecutor you don't want the maximum sentence, If you say you'd prefer I get treatment and probation instead of prison time. Jessica trailed off, leaving the request implicit. Treatment for what, Jessica's first gambling drugs? What exactly drove you to steal from your own sister? The uncomfortable silence that followed suggested there was no addiction to blame, no external compulsion beyond simple greed and poor character. I need to think about this, I said finally. I can't make that kind of decision during a surprise phone call while I'm at work. They only gave me this one call, Jessica said quickly, panic edging her voice. Please, Alex. I'm scared. The women in here. It's not like TV. It's worse. I can't survive years of this. Despite everything, a remnant of protective instinct stirred in me, the big sister who had promised to always take care of her. I pushed it firmly aside. I'll speak with the prosecutor, I said carefully. That's all I can promise right now. I need to consider what's best for Lily and for justice, not just what makes things easier for you. After ending the call, I sat in the stairwell for nearly 20 minutes processing the conversation. Jessica's voice, once so beloved, now evoked a complex mixture of anger, pity, and grief. The sister I had known was gone, if she'd ever truly existed. In her place was a woman who had chosen self-interest over family bonds in the most damaging way possible. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Jessica in a sterile visitation room at the Miami-Dade Corrections Facility. The physical transformation was shocking. Her previously vibrant red hair hung limp and dull around a face that had aged years in months. The prison jumpsuit emphasized how much weight she'd lost. Without makeup and designer clothes, she looked vulnerable and diminished. Thank you for coming, she said, eyes fixed on the table between us. I didn't think you would. Neither did I admitted. But we have things that need to be said in person. For nearly an hour, we engaged in the most honest conversation of our adult lives. I described the devastation her betrayal had caused, not just financially, but emotionally. The trust destroyed the security, shattered the foundation of our relationship, obliterated. I detailed the practical consequences, the business loans it'd taken, the clients lost, the reputation damaged, the sleepless nights, worrying about rebuilding Lily's college fund. Jessica listened without interruption, occasionally wiping tears, but offering no excuses. When I finally fell silent, she spoke with an awareness I'd never heard from her before. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quietly. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I want you to know that none of this was because I didn't love you or Lily. It was because I hated myself. Being around your success just highlighted everything I wasn't. Tyler recognized that weakness and exploited it, but I let him. I chose this. Her acknowledgement of responsibility, while insufficient to undo the damage, was the first step towards something resembling honesty between us. Before leaving, I handed her an envelope containing a letter. Lily asked me to give you this, I explained. It's her words, not mine. I didn't edit or influence it. Jessica stared at the envelope as though it might contain something dangerous. Lily wrote to me. Even after. She's 8, I reminded her. She still sees the world with more compassion than most adults. I don't know what she wrote, but she wanted you to have it. Later, Jessica's public defender called to inform me that after reading Lily's letter, Jessica had agreed to fully cooperate with prosecutors, including testifying against Tyler and providing information about his previous victims. The lawyer didn't share the letter's contents, but mentioned that Jessica had been sobbing for hours after reading it. I never asked Lily what she'd written respecting her privacy in the matter. She simply asked if Aunt Jessica had received her letter and seemed satisfied when I confirmed she had. Whatever words my daughter had shared, they had accomplished what my adult confrontation could not. They had broken through Jessica's defenses to whatever remnant of conscience remained. In exchange for her cooperation, the prosecutor offered Jessica a reduced sentence of 30 months plus probation and mandatory financial counseling. The agreement included a restitution plan that would take years to fulfill, but acknowledged her obligation to repay what she'd stolen. When asked my opinion, I neither endorsed nor opposed the deal. Justice would be served either way, and I had my own healing to focus on. 6 months have passed since Jessica was sentenced. She serves her time at a minimum security facility in Massachusetts, close enough for occasional visits, though I've gone only twice. Each visit brings complicated emotions, anger still simmering beneath surface civility, grief for what our relationship might have been cautious, hope that her apparent remorse might be genuine. Lily asks about her aunt, occasionally sending drawings and short letters that I review before forwarding. I don't prohibit this connection, but monitor it carefully, balancing Lily's natural compassion with necessary boundaries. Tyler faces a much longer sentence after investigators connected him to similar schemes in 3 other states. His trial revealed a pattern of targeting women with assets and using romantic or family connections to gain access to their finances. Jessica was both his victim and accomplice, a complexity the court acknowledged in her reduced sentence. Through her testimony, authorities recovered approximately 40% of the stolen money from accounts in Belize and Panama. The remainder had been spent on luxury goods and travel untraceable and gone forever. My business not only survived, but eventually thrived, partly because the experience gave me unique insight into financial betrayal that resonated with clients WAD experienced, similar, if less dramatic, breaches of trust. I developed a new seminar series on bulletproof financial planning, protecting your assets from external and internal threats. The authenticity of having lived through such a crisis gave me credibility that theoretical knowledge never could. The security measures I implemented have become second nature: 2-factor authentication on all accounts, quarterly security audits, separation of personal and business finances with no crossover access, and regular consultations with a 2-factor authentication financial security specialist. I no longer make financial decisions based on emotional ties, no matter how strong those ties may seem. Trust must be earned through consistent behavior over time, not assumed through blood relationship or shared history. Lily continues to surprise me with her emotional intelligence. During a recent bedtime conversation, she asked thoughtfully, "Do you think Aunt Jessica is learning to be better in jail?" Rather than offering platitudes, I sat with the question honestly. "I hope she's learning and growing," I finally answered. "People can change if they truly want to, and work very hard at it. But it's not something we can count on or expect." Lily nodded sagely. "Like when I practice piano, if I really try and do it every day, I get better. But if I just say, I'm going to practice, and don't actually do it, nothing changes." Exactly like that, I agreed, marveling at her ability to reduce complex human transformation to such a perfect, simple analogy. Our mother-daughter relationship deepened through the crisis in ways I never anticipated. Lily witnessed my vulnerability, my struggle, and ultimately my resilience. Rather than shielding her completely from difficult realities, I included her in age-appropriate ways in our journey back to stability. We created new rituals to replace those that included Jessica building fresh memories, untainted by betrayal. The difficult but necessary visits to Jessica in prison serve multiple purposes. For Lily, they demonstrate that we don't abandon family even when boundaries become necessary. For me, they represent a commitment to truth, facing the reality of who Jessica is rather than who I wished her to be. And for Jessica, they offer a tenuous connection to the outside world, and the possibility, however, remote, of eventual reconciliation. We've discussed what might happen when Jessica is released in approximately 18 months. She will need support, reintegrating into society, finding employment with a felony record, rebuilding a life from scratch. I've made clear that financial support is off the table, but I can offer guidance and connections if she demonstrates consistent commitment to changing her patterns. The boundaries are firm: no access to our home without advance permission, no unsupervised time with Lily, no discussion of financial matters. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome of this ordeal has been the strengthening of my community connections. The friends who rallied around us during the worst moments have become chosen family. Monthly dinners with Natalie and her husband, weekend outings with Marcus and his children, regular coffee with Sandra from next door. These relationships now form the support network that I once assumed could only come from blood. Relatives. The painful growth forced by betrayal has revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed. The financial resilience to rebuild from devastating loss. The emotional capacity to support my daughter while navigating my own grief. The wisdom to establish boundaries without closing my heart entirely. The courage to share my story with others who might benefit from the hard lessons I learned. When Jessica emptied my accounts and vanished with her boyfriend, she took more than money. She stole my fundamental trust in family bonds and my belief in the sister I thought I knew. The heartbreak of that betrayal might have destroyed me, if not for the unexpected wisdom of an 8-year-old who reminded me that sometimes our rescuers come in the most surprising packages. Has your trust ever been betrayed by someone you deeply loved? How did you rebuild afterward? I still struggle some days with balancing forgiveness and self-protection. If you've walked a similar path, share your experience in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the like button. This journey of healing continues every day, and knowing others understand makes the path less lonely. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, trust should be both a gift and an earned privilege, especially when it comes to your financial security.